Space and Hatred. Siafeng. Translation edited by Qinyu. After the SARS epidemic, I overheard a conversation among a few people. One of them, a beautiful woman in her 30s, remarked, "How did this SARS just pass by? It would have been better if it had wiped out a few billion people." I asked her, "Why would you hope for billions to die from SARS?" She responded, "There are too many people, how can we survive?" This is a typical example of hatred caused by limited space. In a coop that can accommodate 10 chickens, if there are only 5 or 6, they will live in harmony. But if there are more than 10, violent conflicts between the chickens often occur. In an overcrowded mouse nest, you can often hear the sound of mice fighting. When there are too many bees in a hive, a queen bee will emerge, initiating a splitting activity. In a family, if the population grows too large, complaints and quarrels will inevitably occur, leading naturally to family division. A cramped living space will inevitably lead to hatred among living beings. If this hatred is not resolved in time, it will eventually result in murder. Bees can split and families can divide, but what happens when there is no more space to divide? In other words, although this Earth, which already holds 6.5 billion people, has not yet reached the critical point of mutual killing, the cramped space has already caused governments and citizens to feel an indescribable oppression. This is especially true in populous countries like China, where the fight for survival space begins in early childhood. This is why the woman at the beginning hoped that SARS could eliminate some of the population. Hatred caused by limited space can no longer be judged by moral standards of good and evil. Everyone wants to survive, and hopes to live better. This desire for a better life inevitably leads to the plundering of resources and the occupation and invasion of space, which in turn causes pollution of water, land, and air. This pollution leads to a vicious cycle, further shrinking the living space. The smaller the space, the fiercer and more brutal the competition for survival. Humanity must find a solution. If not, plagues, wars, famine, disasters, earthquakes, and floods will accompany theft, robbery, kidnapping, occupation, and murder in quick succession. This is called nature. At the same time, there is another risk, which is the forced purification by divine beings. Years ago, I had a dog named Larry. After mating with a neighbor's dog, Larry gave birth to 11 puppies. Initially, the puppies ran around the yard, bringing vitality and joy, but as they grew, trouble followed. First, they fought over food, then their droppings were everywhere, and eventually, I could not walk through the yard. The 12 dogs competed for my attention, surrounding me so tightly that I couldn't move. Dogs are particularly jealous. To win my favor, they started biting each other. What was even worse was that once the door opened, they would rush out, scaring passers-by, especially children who would scream. I had no choice but to give away 6 of them. The remaining 6 were still not easy to handle. Although the number was reduced, the problems persisted. I had to give away a few more until only 3 were left, and the yard finally became peaceful. I concluded that my yard could only accommodate 3 dogs. Once the number exceeded 3, the number of dogs and the yard size did not match. For the dogs that were given away, they couldn't understand why I had to clean them out, but for me, I knew why I had to remove them from my yard. I was forced to implement a forced purification. In a large yard, keeping a few dogs is my choice, but dogs have their nature. They need to mate and reproduce. Preventing them from mating and reproducing is too cruel, but if they mate too often and have too many offspring, the space cannot accommodate them. The result is forced purification. Humans should be more rational than dogs and should be able to foresee crises. If everyone acts according to their own will, considering only the individual and not the whole, calculating only for the part and not planning for the whole, the result will be to force the divine beings to implement forced purification. To resolve the current crisis of overpopulation and limited space, and to avoid the mutual hatred among humans caused by limited space and the ensuing catastrophe, humanity must live and produce according to the theories of Lifechanyuan. But this is just wishful thinking, a fantasy, even a delusion. What should be done? We must take a long-term view and lead those who understand the truth out of the narrow space of competition. As for the rest, leave it to fate.